Okay, I have on the phone Cammy Bean, who I came to be acquainted with through her Learning Visions blog that she writes. And interestingly enough, in this Web 2.0 world that we live in, this is the first time I have ever spoken with Cammy, though we have written back and forth quite a bit over the last year. So we'll go ahead and start with Cammy. Cammy, the first question is, what is your current position where you work?
Okay. Hi, everyone. I am the manager of instructional design at a company called Envision Learning, and we are a provider of e-learning solutions to the corporate training market. So in that, we build custom courses, we build Flash-based templates for clients so that clients can build their own e-learning in-house. And we also dabble a little bit in what we call a learning management system, a learning portal that we create for our clients. So in my particular job as manager of instructional design, I am responsible for kind of a lot of things. We're a small shop. We're 10 people. So when you're working in a company like that, you wear many hats. So I am the instructional designer. I am a project manager. I go on sales calls. I go on, I kind of help close business because I can speak to the training aspect of things, whereas my CEO maybe can't, or she can talk technology more than I can. I do a lot of writing in my job, so I will, if we're designing a custom course for a client, I will work with their subject matter experts to gather all of the content that I need. I write the storyboards. I design the interactivity. I kind of look at the full learning experience, and working with my graphic designers and my programmers, we then do all of the building. I don't really touch the technology piece of what we do. Although there are plenty of instructional designers out in the corporate world who do everything. They have to build, and they have to design, and they have to write. So we've kind of broken it up on a technology split. So I'm going to stop there.
Okay. All right. Have you ever had any other jobs in the instructional design field?
I have been in instructional design for since the mid-'90s. I got into, let's see, I started off at a company I was just in operations and doing business process, and we were designing a new software system in-house. And I was, as the operations project manager, I was helping identify the user needs and then conveying that to the programming team, to our IT department. So I was kind of that interface, that liaison between that, speaking the technical talk and then speaking the end user talk. And out of that kind of naturally fell a training role. I became the trainer on this product that we developed in-house, and we actually did hire an external person to come in, and he created this full curriculum and all of that, and I kind of learned from him. And then I left that company, and I went to, it wasn't e-learning at the time, but it was a web-based training company, and it just really seemed like that was going to be my niche, and we did CD-ROMs back then, and eventually started evolving into web-based delivery, and now where I'm at, it's all pretty much, online, internet or intranet training. And so I've been doing e-learning essentially for 12 plus years in the corporate market, working for a vendor. So I've never worked within the training division at a large company, except when I was the trainer kind of on the classroom end way back when.
Okay, so what is your educational background?
I have a BA in English and in German studies. I do not use my German in my job at all, but writing is essential to what I do.
Oh, so I didn't realize you were... See, my bachelor and master's are in English.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, and, people ask me all the time what an English degree is good for, and I always tell them just to go to graduate school. That's about all it's...
Well, you don't have to. I mean, I think a good, solid liberal arts education prepares you for great things. I had thought at one point that I would go get my master's in education, and I was kind of lined up to start teaching. I wanted to teach high school English, and then I started working, and I liked getting a salary, and then I never went back to school.
Right, right. Oh, I just drew a blank on something that you had said. Oh, I'm glad that you mentioned about how essential writing is as an instructional designer. That most of our job is writing, because I know these students are going to freak out when they see how much writing they're doing in this class.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm glad that you mentioned that. That helps me out.
Yeah, I think being able to be a good writer is key to at least to how instructional design works for me. You need to understand what it is that is trying to be taught. And then you need to translate that back to your learner. So if you can write concisely, if you can write clearly, if you can make yourself understood, those are all critical skills and fields.
Okay, now I think you've answered the next one. Why instructional design and how did you get here? You've kind of given us that one, right?
I kind of did give you that, yeah. I kind of fell into it.
Do you have any more that you want to add to that?
Well, for me, I think what was really appealing to me when I left the company that I was at originally, where I was doing training, what was exciting to me was this whole field of multimedia. When the company that I went to is a company that's no longer in business, but we did a lot of video, and it was really fun, as a multimedia producer. I kind of thought of myself as a multimedia producer first, an instructional designer, I evolved more into that role.
Right.
So I got to go on video shoots and, talk to talent and schmooze with the video camera guys and the crews, and there was just so much variety in this particular, for me, in doing multimedia design and doing instructional design in this particular way. There's so much variety, and that really appeals to me. I'm not just sitting doing one kind of thing all day long. There's a lot of different pieces to the pie.
Okay, so that's one of the next questions. So on a day-to-day basis, what is your job like?
Well, it kind of depends on where a project is in its life cycle. This week I have been doing a lot of QA. So we're a small company. I need to look at
what's QA? For these
QA is quality assurance testing. So our programming team, they build the course, they design it, and they do the graphics and they do the programming, and then we need to test it. And I don't test it to make sure that it's broken or that obviously I want to make sure that it works, but I'm really looking to make sure that we designed it right, that the content is there that needs to be there, that it makes sense. Like, I might sit back and look at a screen and say, this doesn't really work. I thought this would work on paper, but it doesn't really work the way that we've done it here. What can we do to change it while keeping in scope? It's really, that is a big challenge when you're dealing with the corporate market, because you have, budgets you have to deal with, and that's a whole other conversation, so that's a piece of what I've been doing this week. Tomorrow I'm going on a sales call. We're talking to a new client about potentially doing some 3D design work for them on how to install pieces of equipment into customers' cars. I will do a lot of schmoozing back and forth with my clients. So for me, a big part of my job is relationship management and relationship building. I like working with people. I like talking to people, and that's an important part of my job. I'm a people person, so I do that, and I do that well. And I think that's kind of why my job has evolved the way that it has, where I do instructional design, but also that project management piece. I'm making sure that the designers, the developers, that everyone's doing what they need to be doing. How are we doing on that schedule today? And then I might need to communicate that back to the client. When I have a new project, which I'm sort of halfway into one right now, I've done the storyboarding, so I've done all the writing for it. And today I sat down with the graphic designer to think about how we can make this happen on her end. So she's got to do the design and the programming. So now that I've written out this thing on paper, how is she going to build it? So we sat down and had a brainstorming meeting today on that.
Okay. So my next question is, who are your clients? But it sounds like you've got all sorts of clients, in-house and out-of-house.
Yep, we have a lot of clients.
And
that, for me, is... At this company and the last company I worked at, we have so many different kinds of clients. We don't have a vertical market. We're not just working in in just financial or just the automotive industry. We we're a small e-learning company. We take what business we can get, right? So
Yep. Right.
right now I'm working with a large financial institution. You'd know the name. Very well respected, doing a lot of courses for them. I'm working for a national sorority, doing some pretty cool e-learning for that organization, more on the collegiate market, but not really academic stuff.
Right.
We are working with car dealership software companies. They provide software to car dealerships. It's a real big variety. I mean, I've worked from everything from retail supermarkets to lots of banking courses, a lot of software training for banking courses, for manufacturing companies, for consulting firms. It's really kind of runs the gamut, which keeps it interesting, and I really like that because I'm not just stuck into one department. I don't work for IBM, and I can only teach IBM training. I get to do whatever comes my way, and it keeps it really interesting.
That's one of the things that I try to explain to my students all the time. One of the things that I love about being an instructional designer is that, good instruction is good instruction. And if you get me a subject matter expert, I can design anything. And I love that I've done work with NASA and with cheese factories and with Morton Thiokol rockets, plus faculty stuff. I've done things in the legal field. And, you just get to learn all sorts of cool stuff when you're just getting to play.
That's right. Yeah.
What would you say is the most important thing you need to know to be effective at your job?
In my particular job, or just in instructional design in general?
Both.
In my particular job, there's the one thing. I think it's really all about communication, and that takes many forms. So for me, it's communicating with clients, it's communicating with my team members, it's writing. That's communication. Being able to and being able to manage a lot of different balls at any given time, because that's the way projects fall in this world. I'm not working on one thing at any one time. I'm working on 20 things at any one time. As an instructional designer, it's being creative, I think. It's being able to look at content and look at material and how can I make this interesting to my learner? How can I make this more engaging? And that's what I'm always asking myself. And I think the biggest challenge in instructional design for me is that often we're up against really tight deadlines, and you don't always have the time to give it the creative approach that you might want it to. Sometimes you just have to get it done. And unfortunately, the client might be pushing really hard, and they don't really care if what you're creating is crap or, great. Sorry to use that word, but
that's all right.
Sometimes what matters is, it's the deadline more than anything, and that can be frustrating. But you kind of have to do what you can do in the time that you have with the resources that you have.
So I remember when I was in graduate school, and in my experience, this has held up. I'm wondering if it's the same in your experience. They used to always tell us that you've got three options. You've got quick, you've got cheap, and you've got good, and you can have two of them.
That's right. Yeah, that equation is still true. And unfortunately, what a lot of people want is quick and cheap.
Oh.
So how can you make it good within those constraints? How can you still make it good when you're trying to go quick and cheap?
So when it comes to being creative, do you just kind of go by feel, by gut? I know when we teach instructional design, we teach different types of instructional strategies and different, kind of approaches, but where you don't have that background, do you just go by your gut, or do you have certain places that you go look for creative ideas or other things you've seen?
I feel like that's first of all, I would say my biggest area for improvement would be to be more creative in my work, and I'm not sure if that's because because I'm often up against, tight deadlines and that kind of thing. When I do have the time on a project to be creative, where do I look? I've been looking more to gaming and games in general. I mean, that's kind of a big, hot thing right now in the e-learning industry. I will go out and, try to play more online games. I'm not a gamer by nature. I've got kids now who like playing the Wii, and I start trying to look at those kinds of things, a little bit more objectively. How is this, how is this effective? How is this good? How can I apply this to the work that I'm doing? And how can you make something as simple as a multiple choice question into something a little bit more engaging for your learner? Carl Kapp's book, I'm not sure if you've read it, the Games, Gadgets, Gizmos.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That is a great book, and I often will kind of pick that up and flip through that. I have a bunch of books in my office that I pick up a lot when I'm starting a project to get that get the juices flowing again, and just to remind me of good instructional design principles. So Ruth Clark's book, I think, is amazing. Michael Allen's Guide to E-Learning has been really useful to me. As John knows, I'm not a theory person. I'm much more into practical hands-on. What are ways to, how can I do this, and how can I do it well? And I don't get as hung up into the theory behind it, which is probably a weak part on my end for sure.
Or a strength. Maybe.
So I look to the outside world. I look to I look online. I mean, I'm part of this very rich online e-learning community now, and everyone shares everything, and that's just been. I would say that has completely jump-started me as an instructional designer. It's kind of kicked me in. It's given me a great professional boost and given me a lot of resources to tap into, and that's the wonderful world of social networking and blogging.
Okay, so now you have a bachelor's degree in English and German studies. Well, what's the most important thing you learned in that helps you in your job today?
Good writing.
Good writing?
Good writing.
I think you've kind of answered these two, but we're out of fairness, I got to ask all the same questions, right? So, what did you not learn in school that you need right now?
That I need right now?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't learn all the theory, and that's kind of what I'm trying to go back and brush up on with as little effort as possible, because I'm inherently a lazy person. But trying to kind of pedal back and give myself a little bit more of that book learning and instructional design, because I don't come with a degree in this field.
Okay.
And the reason I need that for two reasons. One is so that when I talk to my clients, I sound like I know what I'm talking about a little bit. It's
right.
Often I'm working with instructional designers at other companies. Sometimes they have master's degrees. And they know their stuff, and I want to give them the confidence that they're in good hands, because I, sort of know what I'm talking about. Also, I want to know what I'm talking about, and I want to know why doing things a certain way is the right way, or the better way. So that's backpedaling to learn theory.
Okay. When it comes to being an instructional designer, just anytime, anywhere, what do you think are the three most important skills they need? Three most important things they need.
The three most important skills in the kind of instructional design that I do in the corporate e-learning world, which is different than designing instruction for a classroom, for the academic world, I would say it is writing, it's creativity, and it's organization, being organized.
Now, is that just to keep yourself organized, or does it have to go with that project manager role that you're talking about as well?
Yeah, it's a little bit of that. It's kind of keeping the big picture in mind while being able to focus on little pieces. It's I think that's it's a broad umbrella there. It's being able to, because I do project management too, it's being organized in terms of what everyone else is doing. It's being organized in terms of my own work tasks. Keeping everyone on task, being the taskmaster that I am.
Okay. instructional design as a profession, as a field, where do you see that going?
I see, it seems to me like it's going to get goopier. You know, it's like, with so much available online now, with, you know, just-in-time learning, with Google, with social networking applications, with wikis, with all of these other tools that are available out there, you know, the e-learning course that I create is only going to be a bit piece of that large picture. I think instructional designers are going to need to think about that big picture. You know, it's not just going to be one piece of learning. It's just e-learning. It's going to be this big picture. And I've said this on my blog. I think there's many different kinds of instructional designers at different levels. So there probably always will be the need for an instructional designer who just creates e-learning, like I do. But then there's going to be instructional designers who are thinking about the big picture, who are really thinking about, you know, an overall strategy of learning within an organization, and that becomes, you know, thinking about all of these other tools that are out there. So, you know, there's lots of ways to answer that question. It's kind of depending on what level of instructional designer you are, I suppose.
You know, I've seen just in my own time in the field, which is about, 13 or 14 years now. When I was going to graduate school, all the guys with master's degrees were graduating and getting jobs with like Ernst & Young and Arthur Andersen and making millions of dollars, while we all sat there wondering why we were still working on our PhDs. And you know, and I don't think we see that necessarily anymore. You know, it seems like, you know, my major professor, David Merrill, you know, talks about the fact that that academic programs need to quit worrying about training instructional designers and training project managers, because so many companies have designers by assignment. You know, kind of like you're talking about. You knew the program, so, okay, you go train the program. Come up with the training for it.
Right.
And I think that that's an accurate shift that we're seeing. You know, it doesn't seem like
right. Well, that argument rages in the online learning community too. Can a subject matter expert be an instructional designer? I mean, it's rapid e-learning, you know, the end of it all? Are we just creating a bunch of, you know, junky courses out there and junky online experiences because people don't have instructional design backgrounds?
I think people need to settle down and just do their best at their job that they can do.
That's right. That's right. Settle down. Stop arguing about this. Just do your work and do it well.
Well, yeah, I mean, because you're right. You know, there's some of the stuff I've written on my blog's kind of been tattooed, and you know, the academics don't like me saying some of the stuff that I say. But you know, we're not putting rockets on the moon here. You know, I mean,
That's right.
We're talking about just trying to create good instruction, and you know, I don't see any reason why the two sides of the coin can't talk to each other.
That's right.
It doesn't make sense.
That's right. Well, people get very impassioned about this conversation, this topic. It's true.
I know. I like messing with them too. Makes me happy. Makes me happy. Now, I'm really interested in hearing your answer to this one, because everybody else that I've talked to has an academic background in instructional design. So I'm interested in what you have to this one. So if you could give the graduate students in our program some advice, what would it be?
Get out of grad school. No. If I could give you some advice for, I don't know, do what you love. You know, you should be passionate by what you do, and if this doesn't float your boat, then go find something else to do. You know, you know, depending on the kind of work that you want to do, there's so many different types of instructional design out there. So, you know, if you're in this field, if you're studying a master's degree in it, then obviously something about it floats your boat. So, you know, stick to that and explore and be creative and push things. I mean, just because things have been done a certain way doesn't mean that that's the way that they should be done. And especially now, given all the new tools and technology that are out there, I think there's going to be a lot of turning it all on its head for what it's worth. So take risks and try new stuff.
Okay.
And go forth, yes, go forth and multiply.
What's the job outlook like in the corporate world for a designer?
Mm-hmm.
But just based on your experience, if somebody's willing to relocate somewhere and they don't have any ties down anywhere, what's the job outlook look like?
In Massachusetts or just in general?
Just in general, based on what you know.
In general, it seems like there's always instructional design work. In the corporate sector, there's a lot of freelance opportunities. So if you're looking to, kind of go on your own, there's a lot of freelancing opportunities. And it's kind of on the fence if you need to know the tools or not and need to be able to build the things. If you're doing e-learning, if you're doing, if you're creating courses, I don't build courses myself. I design them and I write them. But there's a lot of jobs that require you to know the tools and to be able to use Captivate and to be able to use Articulate and to be able to use Flash. I think my job is probably a little bit more rare, the kind of role that I have, where it is segregated. Some people are lucky to find jobs where they're just doing pure instructional design. But I think, again, you can find what you're interested in. Some people like to do all of that. So as far as jobs, I think there's plenty. I think in this market, I think e-learning seems to be pretty safe from what I can tell, and we haven't had any downturn. We've got new business coming our way, so I think it seems like a safe bet.
Okay, good. Well, those are the questions I had. Do you have anything else that you want to throw in here? Any other nuggets of knowledge you want to throw at me?
Nah, not for today. I could keep you for hours, I'm sure, though.
All right, well, Cammy, thank you for your time today.
You're welcome.
And
everyone?
I don't know. I'll see you online.
Okay, definitely.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.